Okay guys, I've listened to you. Apparently you really like when I do unscripted and raw footage. So here it is, no editing, just raw straight off the bat. One of the things that I see go mostly wrong with people when they start is they don't have a plan. They just have this idea of I want to get wealthy, so I'm going to get into real estate. So I'll go buy some real estate, or I'll go and do some renovations, or I'll go do some subdivisions. But the whole thing is a bit of a mess because there's actually no clear path. There's no clear strategy as to this is where I'm at, and this is where I'm going to go, and this is how I'm going to get there. So we're going to start with some very basic questions, which if you start with this, I promise you it will speed up your journey. So that's the intention of this, is to get clear on what your journey is, because some of you might find that where you're at the moment, you maybe should be doing things a little bit differently. I'd assert that there could be quite a high possibility that there's a lot of you that may fall into that bracket, because from the people that I work with, the people that I coach, this sort of a strategy session is something we do very, very early on, and there's normally a lot of light bulb moments that go off. So let's start with it. How many ways are there to make property out of, how many ways are there to make money out of real estate? So one of my mentors, Steve McKnight, very famously always says, there's two. Forget all of the hoopla, forget all the drama, forget all the advertising. There are two ways to make money out of real estate. One is growth, one is cash flow. Growth or cash flow. That's it. Growth or cash flow. And there's two ways you can do that. You can do it passively or you can do it actively. Now, the more passive you're going to be in it, typically the less control you'll have over the result, and typically it's going to take a longer period of time. The more active you get, the more you move along that scale, the more control you're going to have over that outcome, and the less time it is likely to take. So we've got growth or cash flow, and we've got active or we've got passive. Now, this here is a choice. This is a choice as to what am I actually willing to do? How much time am I willing to put into this? But it can also be a product of how long am I willing to wait? If your goal is to grow an asset base of $2 million and you're happy to do that over the next 40 years, then you can probably be pretty passive. If your goal is to grow an asset base of $2 million over the next 5 years, you're going to need to be active if you want to achieve that goal in that time frame. But if this is what we've got to work with, if we can only make money through growth or cash flow, what's the right one? Growth or cash flow? Now, cash flow is the buzzword. Cash flow is what is all over the internet because it's kind of that sugar hit. It's giving people what they ultimately want, but is maybe not necessarily the right thing for them now. And let me give you an example. If you have $1,000 in savings right now, okay, great. I teach you how to get a 10% return on your money. Relatively easy to do. You go and deploy your $1,000 asset base into that cash flow asset, and you make, how much? You make $10 a year. All right, how soon are you going to become financially free at $10 a year? It's going to take a long, 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 long time. So if you're starting with $1,000 or $10,000, going immediately into chasing cash flow is probably not the way to go. Because if we add a few zeros here and we say you have a capital base of $1 million, well, if you're getting a 10% return on $1 million, we also get to add a few zeros down here. Now you're getting a $100,000 return on your $1 million. Now that sounds a lot more like freedom. So if getting that asset base to sort of that critical mass is the crucial thing that we need to achieve, that really becomes the main part of the strategy early on. Now, are we doing that through growth or are we doing that through cash flow? The answer is growth. So if we take a lesson from the game Monopoly, it's a case of the houses and the hotels. Then it's a case of build your asset base to a point using assets that are appropriate for growth, and then shifting your focus to cash flow. Now, does it need to be as clean cut as that? Do you need to go for the next 5 years, I'm absolutely doing growth and no cash flow? Not necessarily. As I'm going along, I'm doing mostly a growth strategy, but every now and then there's an asset that just makes a lot of sense to keep because it's a great cash flow asset. But the key is I've got a big enough critical mass, I've got a big enough base that it's not becoming a handbrake. Because the thing is, if you start accumulating cash flow assets too early, it can become a handbrake instead of the rocket booster to your wealth. another example being there is, let's say you've accumulated $100,000 and you go and buy an asset that's positive cash flow. Great, you've probably used $100,000, so you have no more cash. Now what? How are you getting the second one and the third one and the fifth and the sixth? You've now got to wait for the market to do the work for you. You don't have control over that. The other thing being is typically, not always, but typically assets that are cash flow positive tend to not be in areas that are optimal for capital growth. Now, obviously I'm talking about market-driven capital growth there. If you're learning to actively create growth through strategies like development, that's a different story. You can manufacture that. But that's a good example as to, again, if you've got $100,000 and you just go and put that straight into cash flow assets, now what? What's the next step? You've now stuck in this holding pattern. So instead, generally focusing on growth until you've built that critical mass and then start focusing on cash flow. Now, the next question is what's your critical mass? How much do you need before you start shifting to cash flow? How much cash, how much of an asset base do you need to reach your financial goals? Okay, that's the next thing to figure out. To figure that out, we need to know what kind of return you know how to get on your money. So if the best return you know how to get on your money is, say, 5% by putting it in a bank, let's have a look at that. Let's say my goal is that I need to have $100,000 positive cash flow, so net cash flow. We're just going to ignore tax to keep this simple for the time being. But I need $100,000 worth of cash flow to be financially free. All right, $100,000 is my cash flow goal. All right, well, if I know how to get 5%, if that's the best I know how to get, then I divide $100,000 by 5%. What does that mean I need? I need $2 million as an asset base. Now, if I can improve through study and through education, if I can improve the return that I know how to get on my cash, I think it's only logical, and math will tell us, that that asset base will become smaller. Because as an example, we used 10% before. So if I learn how to get a 10% return on my money, which I can tell you is very, very achievable in real estate, now I only need 1 million. Now, what if, just throwing it out there, crazy thought, what if I knew how to get a 20% return on my cash? Right, what do I need now? Now I only need 500,000. Can you see how all of a sudden what might have seemed like a potentially unachievable goal to some, if we focus on our education, we focus on upskilling, all of a sudden financial freedom, that should obviously have 1,000 there, okay? Financial freedom becomes a much more accessible thing, or even just financial security. So if we focus on growth, if we focus on learning strategies to grow our asset base, to grow our cash base, and then ultimately once we've reached the critical mass number that we need deployed into cash flow, then that is our path to success. Now, most people these days can't retire on $100,000, unfortunately, but I would guess that you would feel a lot more secure if you knew that whether you slept or whether you went to work or whether you went on holidays, that $100,000, so roughly $2,000 a week, was coming into your bank account without you doing anything. I have a feeling that that would feel really good for you. I know that feels great. Having cash flow coming into your bank account every single week. It's a life-changing experience. So that is the question, is what is your critical mass? So to figure that out, it's just a question of what is your cash flow goal? Divide it by the return you know how to get, and that's going to give you the asset base that you need to achieve to get financial freedom. Remembering that this can be improved. If you don't have anything else to work on, I would just suggest for now work on 10%, because with relatively little education and investment in yourself and your education, you will see that that is very accessible to you. So if you don't know anything else and you have no other guide, work on 10% for now, and that's going to give you your starting place. Because as you go on that journey of learning how to grow your asset base, you'll see, and that will become obvious to you, how to achieve that sort of return on your cash. But let me know in the comments, what's the asset base you need? What's the return you know how to get? What are your other questions? And then I guess the next question is what are these growth strategies? How can you increase your asset base to that level? Well, that's all your active strategies. That could be cosmetic renovations, that could be structural renovations. One of my favorites is land subdivisions, but there are many, many different growth strategies in that place, and that's the sort of thing we go through in my courses, and I've got a lot of content online which can help you with that as well. So let me know your questions in the comments, and let me know any aha moments, because some of you may have just realized that financial freedom is not as far away as you may have thought. Some of you may have realized that you actually already have the asset base you need. It just needs to be redeployed into different assets. So this can be a really exciting journey to get on, and understanding the path to it can make things seem a lot more achievable. So all the best. See you in the next video.